Welcome to Voice of Stories. Discover tales that inspire, captivate, and bring words to life. Subscribe for unforgettable stories.
The evening had promised to be perfect. The rain was a soft, soothing symphony outside, and I sat comfortably on the couch in our cozy living room, with a steaming mug of tea cradled in my hands. Usually the house was full of the sounds of my younger sister Michelle's chatter or the constant buzz of her son Ethan's teenage energy. But tonight, everything was still. Michelle had gone out for dinner with her friends, and Ethan, who was always slipping into his own world these days, had disappeared upstairs, leaving only Sophie, our fluffy ginger cat, and me to rule this quiet kingdom. I smiled at Sophie, who lay sprawled on the couch beside me, her eyes half closed in that regal way of hers, as though she were the queen of this house. I stretched out, sinking deeper into the cushions, relishing the calm. It was a rare opportunity to unwind. There was no rush, no expectations, just the sound of rain and the flickering light of a candle by the window. After a while, I decided to take a hot bath, a simple luxury that helped me melt away the weight of the day. The steam would soothe my body and mind, I thought. Sophie, of course, had to accompany me, always following me like a loyal shadow. As I turned on the tap and the water began to fill the tub, I glanced at the door, locking it out of habit. The house was empty after all. Sophie settled herself by the threshold, her usual meow offering a quiet approval. Then, with a flick of her tail, she wandered off, probably to resume her royal duties in the living room. The water quickly grew warm and inviting. I sank into the tub, feeling the heat seep into my muscles. The soft light of candles flickered around the room, casting shadows on the walls. I closed my eyes, letting the raindrops outside become the only sound in the world. The stillness was perfect. But then, there was a sound. It was faint at first, just a small creak. A footstep, perhaps. My mind dismissed it as the old house settling, a familiar noise. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it was too real, too deliberate. I tried to ignore it and focus on the soothing warmth of the bath. But the sound came again, closer this time, like someone was walking toward the door. My heartbeat quickened, the calm replaced by a creeping sense of unease. I tried to calm myself. It was just the house. It had to be. Still, I couldn't help but glance at the door, and that's when I saw it. A shadow passing beneath the doorframe, crossing the thin line of light from the hallway. My breath caught. It was too long for a cat, too slow, too deliberate. And then, faintly, I heard it. Slow, steady breathing. Someone was on the other side. "Who's there?" My voice cracked more than I had intended, the words louder than I had hoped. The seconds stretched into eternity. I waited for a response, but there was only silence. Just as I began to tell myself I had imagined it, a voice filtered through the door. "Sorry, Claire. I didn't know you were here." It was Ethan. His voice, however, wasn't quite right. It sounded distant, like he wasn't fully present. My heart settled for a moment, but something about his tone unsettled me. "It's fine, Ethan. I'll be out soon," I called out, trying to sound calm, though my voice trembled slightly. I heard his footsteps retreat, the house falling back into a hushed silence. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something unspoken, something that left a mark. The next morning, the house was quiet. I woke to find Sophie curled up beside me, her fluffy body rising and falling with each soft breath. The morning light filtered lazily through the curtains, and I tried to shake off the strange feeling from the night before. When I walked downstairs, I found Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that was far too strong for him. He didn't even look up when I entered. Normally, he would greet me with a casual morning and a smile, but today he sat there like he was somewhere else entirely. "Good morning," I tried, hoping to break the silence. He muttered a distracted morning without looking at me, his eyes fixed on his cup. Sophie, who had jumped onto the counter, sat staring at both of us, her tail moving slowly back and forth, sensing the tension in the air. I grabbed my own cup and sat down opposite him, trying to fill the silence. But it was a quiet that stretched on, thick with something unsaid. The awkwardness was palpable. I wasn't sure if I should bring up last night, but I needed to know what was going on. Finally, I asked, "Did you get back late last night?" He glanced up, eyes briefly meeting mine before he quickly looked away. "Yeah, a little late," he replied, his voice uncharacteristically soft, as if he were hiding something. There was no energy in him, nothing of the usual spark that defined his presence. We ate in silence. Sophie, as usual, jumped into my lap, curling up comfortably, as if to offer her quiet support. But even the familiar comfort of her presence couldn't ease the tension in the air. Ethan's behavior was strange, and the more I observed him, the more I felt something was off. He barely left his room all day, and when I did see him, his eyes seemed distant, clouded by some inner turmoil I couldn't quite grasp. By evening, I decided to prepare dinner, hoping it would bring some normalcy back. But as I was chopping vegetables, Sophie suddenly leaped up onto the table, staring intently at the door as if waiting for someone. A few moments later, Ethan appeared, his movements slow, hesitant. "Smells good," he remarked, offering a tight smile, but he didn't seem quite like himself. "I thought we could have dinner together," I said, hoping to break through the awkwardness. He nodded silently and sat down at the table, his body language tense. We ate, talking about trivial things: school, Michelle's plans, the weather. But there was no real warmth in the conversation. We were both trying, but it didn't feel like it was enough. When dinner ended and I was clearing the plates, something changed. Ethan stood up abruptly, his body tense. He looked at me for a moment, his eyes dark with something unreadable, before he took a step toward me. "Claire," he began softly, his voice breaking the stillness, but he faltered, unsure of what to say. He was so close now, too close, my heart racing faster than I could control. And then, without warning, he leaned in, just slightly, as if seeking something: reassurance, connection, maybe even just a moment of comfort. I took a small step back, not wanting to overthink it, but my cheeks burned with a strange heat. "It's okay, Ethan," I said, trying to calm both of us. "Sorry," he whispered quickly, backing away with a flicker of embarrassment in his eyes before turning quickly and heading upstairs. I stood there, heart pounding, feeling more confused than ever. Sophie watched it all, her amber eyes narrow, and I could swear she disapproved of both of us. That night, I lay awake, her soft purring a gentle comfort, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that moment. Ethan's closeness, his behavior. Something had changed between us, but I wasn't sure what or how to fix it. The next morning, things were tense, but quieter, like we were both pretending to return to normal. Ethan and I exchanged a few pleasantries, but there was a distance between us, one we were both afraid to cross. The days passed in a blur of awkward silences and strained conversations. Ethan, for his part, seemed to retreat further into himself, only coming down for meals or brief moments of contact. I didn't know how to bridge the gap that had appeared between us. Finally, one evening, after dinner, I was sitting in the living room when Ethan returned home early. His footsteps were soft, almost as if he didn't want to disturb me. "You're back early," I said, glancing up. "Yeah, decided to come home," he answered, his voice quieter than usual. He sat down across from me, his eyes cast downward, his body tense. We sat in silence for a while, both of us struggling to find the words to express what had changed. Ethan shifted in his seat, his gaze finally meeting mine. "Claire," he began, and there was something different in his eyes now. Something softer, more vulnerable. "I know it's not easy, all this confusion, but I want you to know that you're important to me." His words hung in the air like a weight, but somehow in that moment I understood. I nodded, a small smile playing on my lips. "Thank you, Ethan. That means more than you know." He gave a small, almost shy smile, and the air between us seemed to lighten. Sophie, ever the observer, hopped into his lap, purring contentedly, as if she too had sensed the shift. And just like that, we both knew things would be okay. It might take time, but we'd figure it out together.